Welcome back to the Mindful Sagittarian podcast. I'm Sally, and I have a special guest with me today.
Ruvinka.
Yay! I'm so happy that you decided to come on. Ruvinka is a coworker and a very good friend, and also a very well-known community member in the spiritual community circles that I am in. So, Ruvinka, do you want to introduce yourself real fast?
Sure. I'm Ruvinka. I entered into the community with Sally that Sally's in about a year ago now, and been enjoying it. And I guess that's it. I don't know. I don't know what else to
Okay, I
say.
kind of put you on the spot. So,
Yes. I'm
um,
5'7" and
you're an Aries.
I am in Aries with a Scorpio rising, and that's fun. And then you throw in that Virgo moon to make sure I have to be perfect, and it's gnarly.
So fire, earth, and water. I'm fire, air, and earth. So I love this combination for us. Ruvinka is
Yeah.
being very humble right now. Um, you guys know I talk about other creators on my podcast, give them shout outs. Ruvinka and I are moderators together in the Boo Crew for Theron Beyond the Veil. If you haven't checked out Theron, Theron is amazing. Pro Professional paranormal investigator and amazing psychic medium and friend. Go check them out at theronbeyondtheveil.com and join the Boo Crew because we're awesome.
We
Anyway,
are.
yeah, so I wanted to bring Ruvinka on today as my first guest for season two because I've asked the community over at the Savage Den what they would like to hear about. And our resident Australian friend, Kai, brought up a very interesting point about spiritualism in the 80s and also brought up conversation from other members about, what about New Age spiritualism and just spiritualism today and how it all kind of connects. So I was like, hey, any volunteers? And Ravinka was like, I volunteer as tribute. So I love this for us. And also Ruvinka is very insightful. Definitely psychic as fuck.
Oh,
You are though. You bring a lot of great insight. So I am looking forward to you sharing some of your personal experiences and just kind of educating us on what that was about. So, without
yeah.
further ado, ladies and gents, and yeah, ladies and gents, my life right now. Sorry, guys. You guys know me, neurospicy. That's just what happens. It's unhinged chaos on this podcast. Dumpster fires about to happen on my end anyway. Um,
I
without
can't
further,
help you because I'm fired too. So,
it's all good. We just stoke each other's fire and then just like call it a day. If it burns down, it burns down. Fuck it. It's another day. Um, but yeah, as you guys can see, if you're watching the podcast from YouTube, we are kind of like dressed up. My look is very satanic panic inspired. I even have a little pentagram. I'm super proud. I don't know how my hand was steady enough to draw that. But
I'm
Ruvinka,
impressed
yeah,
and
Ruvinka, I
jealous. I should have
love
thought to do that.
I know, right? But like I love, love, love your blouse because
Oh, yeah.
for that to like one of our Gothy events at Sacred Spaces for the meet and greet, and I was just like, that shirt is iconic. Not as iconic as
Yeah.
the person wearing it, but
Oh,
anyway, so we're going to get into spiritualism throughout the decades. And we're going to start in the 1970s. So come back with us in time as Ruvinka shares her personal experience. So, Ruvinka, when somebody mentions any kind of spiritualism related anything, like, do you have like an early is like memory that you would want to share as to like how you got involved in the spiritualism movement?
sure. Um, I would have to say that it was because of my parents. Not that they were super new agey, but they were very well educated and very open-minded. And my dad gave me a book written about a Yaqui Indian in Mexico and the ways of sorcery. And that really kind of, and I was like maybe 10, 11 years old. And it really opened my mind to the possibility of magic through imagination, which, I have a huge imagination. So that was easy for me.
That's amazing that your parents were that open-minded to like bring that into your life. I'm like, you said sorcery, and I'm just like, Harry Potter. Because like a lot of kids in the late 1990s, that's what we were reading. I mean, correct me. Yeah. No, not late 1990s. It was maybe early 2000s because I was 11 when it came out. So, yeah. 99. Yeah, so like 1999, 2000. Um, when Harry Potter came out, that was like a whole thing.
It
And like
was.
I remember my mom telling me I couldn't read Harry Potter because it was
Oh, I'll bet.
offensive. So
Yeah,
I'm
I'll bet.
super interested in this story you just started telling with your parents, like getting you to kind of dip your toes in the waters of spiritualism. That this is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
So, cool. So okay, you talked about the book. Did you actually read the whole
Mhm.
book?
I did. I read four of them.
Oh, okay. So
Four of them. Yeah,
books.
it's by Carlos Castaneda.
Okay.
It's about a Yaqui Indian named Don Juan. I know that sounds silly, but
Oh God.
that's yeah. And they're definitely it's wild that I read them so young because they're definitely not for children. There is like peyote usage mentioned and some other adult themes that get mentioned. But my parents never, I don't know, hid that kind of stuff. We were always just really frank about it, really blunt about it, kind of. It was not a big deal. Um, so, yeah, I read those and really felt like with my imagination, I could do real magic at 11.
Well, you're doing it now, so I love this for you. Um,
Yeah,
so that sounds like kind of like the new age spiritualism, like when that was kind of around. And you had mentioned
yeah.
before I hit record that from ages here to here, that's kind of what you were exposed to. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as to like after you read these books, like how you felt
Mhm.
about things and kind of what was going on in that period of life for you?
Yeah. So I was 10 to 18 during the Satanic Panic. Um, and so I was like, what, grade school age. And the earliest that I remember really, besides these books, really being new agey was this big crystal movement. And it kind of happens today. You'll see like all these big crystal places pop up and you have to be careful because there's a lot of fake crystals out there, dyed things and just it was an interesting time because of that. Um, People really, and it wasn't like Himalayan pink salt crystal. It was like, this particular crystal is going to fix your life. You just have to like give it energy every single day at 2 o'clock. It was oddly specific back then, at least in my experience. Um, my dad actually attended a conference with his sister where they did kind of a mind exercise in which you would find out who your ancestor guide was by imagining an elevator, and whoever greeted you when the elevator opened was your guide, your ancestor guide. So I latched onto that really quick and was like, okay, I'm going to be in touch with my ancestors. I'm going to talk to my mama every single day. She's going to show me where the fairies live. um, but there was definitely a very corporate side to it that was very evident and a very obvious, uh, searching for the word, not corporate, but consumerism. That's the word, consumerism. It was very geared towards making money, and it was obvious, and you could tell, and it was icky, and people got taken for a lot of money, a lot of money, um, which kind of fueled at the time this attitude that anything to do with mysticism was just really bad. It was morally bad. It was spiritually bad. It was um, criminal. It's at the time in my teens, my later teens, I kind of felt like it was like the way that the Romani, who are better known as Gypsy, were looked at as, less than human because they were other. And so I came across a lot of attitudes like that. Um, One of the wildest things was the party line phone numbers. I don't know if you ever were on a party line, but I was.
No,
And I bet I know a couple of other people in our group that were. But
probably.
it would be advertised on TV, usually after 10 p.m. And it was like, our psychics are ready to read your fortune. And
No, I remember that.
there'd be
Like
like,
Miss Cleo was like a big thing, and California
yes, Miss Cleo.
like kind of came out of that.
Yes, exactly. Like there was just all these psychics ready to tell you your fortune. So yeah, that was wild.
That is so wild. It's like mysticism and spiritualism like became so mainstream. Like I feel like it thrived a lot in like coming out of the 80s like into the 90s and early 2000s, and like it kind of was like trendy. It kind of came across that way because like you said like the phone a psychic, right?
Yeah.
Like call Miss Cleo, which was like the biggest scam in the world, right? And you call California psychics like, what was it like $1.50, $2 a minute, and like, we'll tell you all about your life. Um, but what's interesting to me is that everything always reverts back to Christianity. Like the entire satanic panic, right? It's like, why is it referring to Satan, who is in the Bible, right? It's like they could have called it anything else. They could have called it lunacy, the
Yeah.
lunatic panic. But no, they were just like, no, we're just gonna attach Satan to this, and we're just gonna like sell papers and sensationalize things.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not super familiar with the Satanic Panic, but I have heard things about it. And also like our community members talking about it. So I did a little research, and it's just really fascinating to me that, people were just getting painted as like Satanists. Like I saw this article and it was like this podcaster. I didn't even know that podcasts were really a thing in like the 80s, right? Um, well, I was born in the late 80s, so in this
Yeah.
in this form. And this podcaster, I'm going to quote them because this is really interesting to me. They said, oh my goodness, where is it? Okay. She said, and her name was Sarah Marshall, host of the history podcast You're Wrong About. And she said, don't look in the mirror. The call is not coming from inside the house. The Satanists are the problem. And this was like in the early 80s. I think this was like in like 1982. Um, and it was just like talking about satanic rituals happening in the late 80s, like actually
Yeah.
80s. Um, Talking about like animal mutilations, weird
Hmm.
rituals. Rock music was associated with devil worship, satanic graffiti. Oh, backward messages in pop songs. I remember
Yeah.
I went down the rabbit
Yeah.
hole, and I know Queen got accused, the rock band Queen got accused a lot of satanic messages being in their songs if you played their records backwards. I remember like Another One Bites the Dust was a big one. And I was just kind of like so fascinated by it. And it was just like, who takes the time to sit there and like put this like cult, like satanic cult-like messages into like mainstream music? I mean, that's kind of genius, really. But kind of
Yeah.
like it got so sensationalized, and like I think
It really
celebrities
did.
were getting accused, from what I'm seeing, like Ozzy Osbourne, like celebrities that were like kind of gothy or kind of alternative, they were all being like linked and associated with like the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
And
Kiss was. I remember somebody
oh yeah,
telling me
they
that
definitely look
Kiss
like they
stood
have
for
going
Knights
on.
in Satan's Service. Like, okay. And of course, they were so different, the way that they presented. So, of course, they had to be bad.
I'm literally sitting here thinking about Judas Priest. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I just got a drop of it, and I was just like, this is what happens when psychic people talk about psychic things. Um, but yeah, no, I was just like thinking to myself, like, how ridiculous does it look like now? Like, we're in 2025. I almost said 2024. Geez.
Nope.
2025, looking back, and this is like, what, 35 to 40 years ago, all of this was happening.
Yeah.
And like looking back at it now, it's like, how ignorant were we as a human race to like think that that was a thing? Like you believe whatever you want to believe, right? Like if you're an actual Satanist, like I don't mean any offense. This is just my thoughts, my opinions. Everybody has one. Um, but it made Satanists and like probably Wiccans and like witches look really bad for no freaking reason because it got sensationalized by the media. And like I don't know, do you just randomly think of a memory and think, "Oh yeah, my neighbor Bob sacrificed goats in his backyard. Like he's a Satanist. Let me keep my children away from them." Like what constitutes being labeled as being satanic? And like
Yeah, what's weird is that like normal deviant behavior, like graffiti and all that stuff, got labeled as satanic, like just because it was the fever going around, early on, like the early 80s, like not as late as 85. I lived like 2 blocks from a railway that just went through this little farm town. And there was a dead dog that I found, mutilated, spray painted, and everyone labeled that as satanic. But why? It could have just been some asshole kid, that just was doing stuff because they're not okay,
a serial killer in the making. Yeah,
probably,
because that is a
but
sign.
a satanic cult member, probably not. I remember being told when I moved into that town that there was a group of Satanists. And at Halloween, it was like a big scary thing. All the girls were like, "Oh, they're looking for girls to kidnap for the cult, blah, blah, blah. They want blonde hair and blue eyes." And I was like, "Well, I'm safe. I've got dark hair and dark eyes, so I'm all right. You
You're
guys
like,
go
I'm
be
a
scared."
heathen. It's all good. They don't want me.
Right, right. And I actually went to school, high school, with a Satanist, this girl, and I was fascinated with her. And she was so sweet. She was so open about it. And um God, did she get hassled? She got hassled so hard. She lost her job, all kinds of crazy stuff. But she would sit and talk to me about it because I've always been the kind of person's like, I'm not going to form an opinion until I do some research, until I really find out some facts, and then I'll have an opinion about it. She lent me her Bible. It was the silliest thing ever. It was just written in red and everything was backwards. And she's like, "Yeah, it's nothing. It's not a real thing." And I was like, "Obviously, that's pretty silly." And the most impactful thing that she said to me was, you know, people pray to who they pray to.
Mhm.
And I just happen to pray to Satan because I feel like it gets shit done. And it was so practical and so not mystical and so not evil and awful that I was just like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. And that's when I started thinking about other energies and entities that I could communicate and talk to, and maybe not pray to, but like, have a relation with, like just hang out, chill, learn, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I wish I could remember her name. I'd shout her out. She was an amazing young lady. Um, but yeah, I actually went to school with an actual Satanist, and she was the safest human being in the world.
You could just send out good positive energy towards her, and I'm sure she'll know, like somewhere in the ether,
Yeah,
you gave her a shout out. Um,
I do occasionally.
Good. I think that's awesome that you had like such a positive experience, like to kind of debunk the the sensationalizing with satanic things or like Satanism. Because honestly, right now, like currently 2025, if I saw somebody post something on the internet or talk about, oh, I worship Satan, I wouldn't jump to, oh, you're a Satanist, which is really funny to me because a couple of years ago I might have. But
Yeah.
currently I'm like, oh, what other deities do you work with? Because like, or what other demons do you work with? Like, do you work with Asmodeus? Do you work with Lucifer? Do you work with Lilith? Like, all the questions would be coming out, right? But even just a couple of years ago, like, I didn't know. I would have just been like, oh, okay, that's a little concerning, because I didn't know anything about it. And I can admit that. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm perfect and I know everything because I fucking don't. Um,
No.
but it's just how we were brought up, I think. And I think it's just
Mhm.
so funny that like when people say Satan or like, anything that has to do with that word, it's like all the Christians in the Bible Belt are like getting up out of bed with their pitchforks, like, what the fuck? Um, no offense to Christians who do not do that. I'm just being funny. Um, because I was raised Christian. I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and I know the things that were told to me that I was made to believe. And it was a lot like that. Like, don't read Harry Potter, it's satanic. J.K. Rowling is a Satanist. Like, don't watch MTV because it'll corrupt your mind. You'll be a
I was
Satan.
talking to my husband about MTV. Well, I was talking to him about, this subject, and we lived in the same town for a short while. We went to the same high school for a short while. We never met at that time. Isn't that weird?
It is
Um,
weird. Divine
but he
timing.
said to, he said that Manuka, sorry, that's where we lived at the time. Did they somehow like cut MTV off? Or maybe just all the parents decided like not to allow it or something. And I looked at him crazy. I was like, oh my God, I watched so much MTV back then. Like it was like the thing I wanted, all the music, all the time. I didn't want to be outside with kids that didn't like me, to be quite frank. So yeah, MTV was like a sanctuary for me. And D&D was something also that got really looked at, down some noses. Um, I remember I went to pick my brother up from a babysitter, and I had a D&D book. And when it got started, they had fictional books. And she took a look at it, and oh, she got mad and upset. And she's like, don't you know that's so evil? It's so bad for your soul. And I'm like, I just want to read about women that kick ass. Like, I don't care. I want to read about a woman who can make a bow shot from like 5 miles away. Like that's what I want. I'm looking for strong women to read about. Like, I don't care about that other stuff.
I
Um,
this because like yeah, like in the 90s, like I thought I was Xena Warrior Princess. Like I really did. Like to this day, my favorite show of all time. And I just found out that Lucy Lawless and Renee O'Connor, they stopped doing Xena conventions years ago.
yeah.
How about they just announced that they're gonna do a Xena convention for like the special anniversary in Burbank, California, the week of Spirits of Savannah? I was so upset. I was so
Oh
upset. I was like, oh my God. But it's okay. I can love them from afar. And I would rather, talk to ghosties here. So,
no.
but no,
It's
like
just as rare.
yeah, no, it's just like out of nowhere. And I was like, are you guys teasing me for real? Like for years, I tried to go to this convention and then all of a sudden, like, anyway, yeah, strong women. That's interesting you bring up D&D because it's like not even satanic in the least. If anything, like it's just fantasy literature. I feel like, and what's funny is that my senior exit project, because when I was in high school, we had to like pick a topic and basically give a just high school version of like a dissertation on like the topic, right? My topic was the positive after effects of fantasy literature in young children as adults. And I
Nice.
talked about Harry Potter. I talked about Chronicles of Narnia. I talked about Lord of the Rings, which I've never seen or read. I'm sorry. I read The Hobbit because I was required to. Like, what was that? Animorphs. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where like these kids like turn into animals. That's like part of like,
Yeah.
um, any kind of like Twilight, any kind of fantasy type of literature. It's like I basically argued and I got an A and I did my project
Hmm.
really last minute. I'm sorry, Miss Blair. Like I know you're what you're never gonna watch this, but I've talked to you about this in person years and years later, and you were just like ADHD. because I did my senior exit project maybe a week before it was due, and they gave us the entire year, and I got an A. So I graduated. That's all that matters. But it's just funny how like people grasp at straws, right? Like here's this one thing, and all of a sudden it goes because you're just connecting everything to it. I think the same goes to say about spirituality now, you know? Just like not everything's connected. Like it could be considered spirituality, but not everything is connected. Um, so I could only imagine what the attitude was like towards like psychics or psychic mediumship or talking to ghosts, talking to the people who passed on. So do you have any recollection or anything that you would like to share from like when you were a child, people talking about mediumship in any way?
They didn't when I was young. When I was, maybe the second half of high school, I would hear a lot more about it. Because when I was younger, it was very much like, don't let the children hear about it. Don't talk about it around the children so that they don't get, hurt, harmed by this stuff. I remember the movie The Craft came out, and suddenly it became so cool to be witchy and spooky and be able to do all the things. So it became a big thing to do, at parties. And if you didn't have a board, like I drew like a million of them probably, just with a big piece of paper and use a shot glass. Um,
Ooh, okay,
so it
Ruvinka.
got popular.
I was just thinking Ouija boards, seances,
Mhm.
like all sorts of like extreme things. I was just like, I wonder if like people really even knew what a paranormal investigation was back then either.
They did. Oh, I'm not gonna remember it. I'm not gonna remember the famous haunted house that the paranormal investigator couple, man and wife,
Right,
were
the movie
involved
The
in.
Conjuring was based on it.
Yeah, exactly. That one, that's the one. So they did, people in the 70s were definitely aware, people in the 80s were definitely aware. Also, the movie that was based on the house, I think in Connecticut. Um, I'm not gonna remember any of the movie names today.
It's all
But
good.
anyway, there were a lot of movies that were suddenly start like The Omen came out, and stuff like that started to really get popular, and it was because it fed into that fear, and at the same time there was a growing community that was like, I don't know, it's kind of cool. I think a lot of people were trying to reconnect to some old roots, and some people found that maybe their ancestors had gifts or had ways of divining or ways to make medicine. And so, it got popular that way.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yeah,
Because
that's the one.
Lorraine was actually still guest starring in a lot of paranormal TV shows, like up until like she passed. And
Yeah.
like a lot of teams that I've seen on the internet have tried to even like attempt to contact her. And some of them claim that they have, but you know, I've never tried to contact her, so I don't know. But I think it is fascinating like how quickly they rose in fame for something that people still even ridicule today. Like, if people can't
Yeah.
explain it, they ridicule it. Or if they can't explain it, it doesn't exist. It's like one of those things. And, unfortunately, like, all we can do is keep doing what we're doing, like, individually as, spiritual people. But, ignorance is bliss, right? So
Sometimes.
I'm not going to sit here and, like, try to convince people that ghosts exist. If you don't believe in ghosts, then you don't believe in ghosts. Scare
Well,
your
I'll find out
reflection in the
eventually.
mirror. Um, because I feel like if you told somebody, "Oh, I see a UFO in the sky," they would be more apt to believe that than saying, "Oh, there's a ghost standing behind you."
Probably. Probably. Yeah, America's been obsessed with UFOs since the 50s. Seriously
Talk about
obsessed, you
Area
know.
Area 51 out in the middle of the desert, CIA files
Yeah.
being revealed and unraveling secrets by the FBI. Like,
Yeah.
so much. I
And
mean,
somehow science fiction escaped being demonized, where mysticism couldn't escape being demonized, science fiction did,
mhm.
which is interesting in its own right, I think.
Man, I remember watching this movie called Mars Attacks. I don't know if you remember it. And I mean, that's where I remember Tom Jones from. It's not unusual. Like I literally every time I hear that song, I remember that movie because that movie traumatized me so bad. Like now I think it's funny, but when I first watched it, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like aliens, heads exploding from like listening to a record. Roller Coaster of Love, that song comes to mind.
hmm
That song that they played, like I remember that song, like the notes of it, and I'm just like, oh my God. It that movie was crazy. But anyway, I say that to say this. I was just like, aliens. Huh. I guess that makes sense because we might not be the only intelligent life here. But why is it so hard for people to like believe that there's ghosts and deities and entities and like spirits? Like, I don't get it. What was the most ridiculous thing that you've ever seen like be labeled as being like satanic or like ungodly?
Oh my God. No, it's bad. It is so
Oh,
bad.
do tell. We spill the tea here at the Mindful Sagittarian because we're demure.
My best friend in my junior and senior year of high school, we we dressed a lot alike, like best friends do. If no one accuses you of being a sister or more, then are you really best friends? Um,
What was
but
scarier back then, being satanic or being gay?
right, the same thing, wasn't it?
Right?
um, so what I didn't know was the high school I moved into, it's near a religious college. And what I wasn't aware of at the time was before I moved there, they'd actually had a large group of young people get involved in a cult of some sort and like leave. They like moved way out of state. I didn't know that. So
Like a
there
costume
was
of like
some social
cultists?
trauma going on. I don't know anything more about it except for that happened. And there was my junior year, there was a mandate put out for school that you couldn't wear all black. So me and my best friend just decided we would wear shades of gray.
I love this.
And then the peace sign was banned. That's what we did. We were like, wait a minute, I don't understand. And so the religious sect of people said it's a broken cross. And I was like, but it's upside down. So it's a double negative, right? Like you broke the bad cross. So it should be good now, right? Nope, couldn't wear a peace sign.
Oh no.
I know it's crazy. That's the craziest thing I can think of.
I'm just like, I'm just connecting two and two together. And the way that I drew the dots in my head, I was like, so the hippies became Satanists. That makes sense. Cool. Free love, free Satan.
Well, freedom of thought is what both of them believe in. So, that scares a group of people sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like even now in modern times, I mean, guys, we're in 2025 and you still see such outdated, ways of thinking. Like, no offense out there, but it's boomer mentality, just like these are the set things. This is what we know. This is what we're comfortable with. And anything outside of that is just bad. It is evil. This is not what you're supposed to be doing, whether that's like being, in the LGBTQIA plus community, whether that's, you're a woman owning a business, whether that's, like choosing not to get married and just be single. Like there's so many things, right, that are considered taboo still by boomers.
Yeah.
And if that's the way you think, that's the way you think. But don't try to push your thoughts on other people. Like, I'm
Be
spiritual,
nice.
but I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you suck because you don't believe in the same deities I do. That's just dumb. So dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, what's interesting to me is that, like my parents' generation is the boomer generation, right? Because I'm an Xer, and my younger brother is a cusp Xennial. He's like the oldest of the millennials. And, you know, so many of my parents' contemporaries fell into the same trap that their parents fell into, that restrictive thinking. It's not flexible anymore. And it's very frightened. Like my grandparents, who were the greatest generation, watched so much news all day, every day, that they frightened themselves to death, you know? And I see a lot of my parents' contemporaries. My parents were the opposite of all of that. So it's almost like they don't count. But now it seems like that generation has done that because they've put a death grip on power, and so many of them are at an age where they do become so mentally inflexible.
And I don't think it's just like a generational thing, right? I don't think it's just you were born in that generation. It's that mentality. If you choose to be stuck in that boomer mentality, that's what I'm talking about. Like my ex is a Gen Xer, okay? But she was like a boomer. And I'm just like, how does that work? But with the 20-year age gap, that was a lot. We thought a lot differently on a lot of different things. And we both had our own religious trauma to deal with, although, she's still Christian, I'm not. Uh but just like so judgy. Like like you are a Gen Xer, but you communicate so well with the millennials, other Gen Xers, the zillennials, and even the oh my God, Gen Z. Gen Z right now, like it is so crazy to me in the best way possible how the spiritual communities that we're involved in, it doesn't matter how old you are, like physically, what is time? Um, we've talked about this before. Like, I'm an old soul, but in this body, I am 36. That's cool, whatever. But like the ageism,
Mhm.
it's like a state of mentality, I think. It's like if you're gonna think like that, then you're gonna get treated like that. I try my best not to sound like, how like my parents try to raise me or like the things that I was being told when I was younger because everyone is raised in different environments and people choose to break out of that. People choose to work on their
Mhm.
trauma, their generational trauma, their emotional trauma, relationship trauma, whatever that may be. As adults, we choose to work on that to move past it. So it's like, I don't like labeling people, but I think when I say boomer mentality, the boomers are the problem. Like, that's what I'm talking about. It's that state of mentality that you're stubborn and you don't want to change, you don't want to entertain other people's thoughts. And I think that's why I really love talking to you so much because you bridge that generational gap. Like you don't sit there and judge like somebody younger coming in saying, gung-ho things because, they're new to spirituality and they're just like, oh, for things. And you're just like, cool, let's share our thoughts. Let's talk about it.
Do you remember telling me that story of those people coming out of the cemetery at you all when you were driving past that old cemetery, that farm?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, up on top of the hill, and they came running down the hill.
Yeah. That's a crazy story. And I was partying out in the middle of a farmer's field, and
Sounds like
there
a
was
really
a
witchy thing to do, Ruvinka.
partying in a farmer's field.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some robed people showed up and were like, you know what? We're done. Y'all can have the fire. We won't put it out. Take it over. Fuel it. Have a good time. We're out. Because it
Sounds like
was
some
like,
that
hmm.
that sounds like some Jeepers Creepers nonsense.
Yeah, but it was probably like a football team that was just like wanting the space for themselves and just decided to scare us out. It's probably all it was.
I'm just like, is the dude gonna pop out of the truck? Like,
Yeah, yeah. And it was like, all the ghost stories that you get told it just had that edge to it. So it's like, there's a group that runs around the middle of the night, and if you're out past curfew, all that stuff.
I love
It's
that.
just wild.
Um, but I'm gonna go back to the question that I was about to ask. If you could share
Mm,
like a piece of advice with like younger spiritual people or witches, mediums, people who like the spooky and the paranormal, what would that piece of advice be in this age of the internet?
mm. That's a really, really good question. Um, I think what's really important is that you lean into yourself, that you continue to lean into yourself your whole life, because you will change so much. And, I used to have to go to a library and read books about things that I was curious about, and the books were vetted. You could look at who wrote the book and what their sources were, and what their sources were. You could just go back and back. And the internet, I think, kind of, because it's so easy to get the information, but it's a little bit more difficult to vet it. Because you read something, and whether you believe it or not, there's a part of your brain that goes, oh, okay, that you kind of have to filter out. But if you know yourself, if you know your own energy very, very well, if you know your own power or ability very, very well, then you won't fall into a trap, that false trap of, oh, I can do all the things, or I don't know what's going on, or someone told me XYZ about myself. You'll know the truth of all of that. You won't have to worry about it being a panic situation where someone's leading you by the nose. So that's my advice. Lean into yourself always. Know yourself better than you know anything else.
Yeah, I think that's really sound advice as, being in the spiritual community, doing shadow work and working on your trauma, going to therapy. Those are some really big topics that are talked about a
Yeah.
lot lately. Um, I kind of joined into this spiritual community on the internet, this past spring. And even since the spring, topics of conversations have changed and evolved. And, mental health and therapy is like a big topic that comes up right now. And I think living as authentically as possible, being true to yourself, you know, you're living a corporeal life. Yes, some of us do astral work, some of us do things like outside of our body or, delve into past lives or delve into the future, premonitions, whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to return to this body and this self. And if you're not
Mhm.
comfortable with who you are, then how are you going to, one, do readings for other people or give anybody else advice or do your own work effectively? Because if you don't know who you are, your guides don't know who the hell you are either. You're not really giving them a lot of information to work with. Yeah, they probably know, but sometimes our guides don't tell us everything. Our deities don't tell us everything there is to know. They want you to figure it out on your own, which is what I've been doing for the past couple of months, just figuring more and more out. And it's kind of a cool process to go through if you're willing to do
Mhm.
the work. Um, so speaking of internet communities, like how did you find other witchy people back then? Or like, back when you were, in high school or at college age, like how did you connect with other like-minded people?
Um, you observed a lot. You had to
Oh,
keep
it's
your
the
eyes
body
open.
language and the signs, the vibes.
Yeah, I got accused of being like very cat-like, as I would just kind of stand and watch people for a long time. But, also, you know, the alternative era, the punk era, the grunge era, like I had a battle jacket that had all kinds of stuff on it. You knew exactly what I thought about everything because it was all over the front of my jacket. Um, so yeah, you would just look for people like reading the same book that you were reading, or reading a book that made you curious or interested, because it wasn't so much, facing the phone, connecting that way. You had to see somebody, in person and get a feel for them. I think that we've lost a little bit of that because so much of our time is through a screen. It's nice because you can still connect from so far away, but at the same time, you know, not having that person with you, it's like getting a handwritten letter is different from getting an email. There's
Oh my
some
God.
energy that just
Yes.
doesn't really reach through.
Yes, I love exchanging snail mail. Like, I really love writing handwritten cards, handwritten notes. Like you said, you put so much energy and thought behind it and intent. It's like when you text someone, Merry Christmas or like Happy Yule, Happy Holidays, and like have a great New Year versus like writing it down in a card. I feel like it's that personal touch says a lot. Like that's why sometimes I'd be sending out holiday cards really, really late because I'd be like setting a goal. Like I'm gonna write 3 cards today because I fill up the whole page. And then my hand starts cramping. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna like set a goal for myself. Um, but that's why I love the fact that even though we all like connect on the internet now, that we have opportunities and like cool events that we can connect at in person. Like, let's
Yeah.
talk about sacred spaces for a second here. I met you for the first time at Sacred Spaces, and I didn't know what to
Yeah.
expect other than the fact that you were a lot of fun. And like I was starting to get to know you and like you in person. It's okay. I'll just repeat what I said so I can edit that part out. That's why I really enjoyed meeting you at Sacred Spaces because the demeanor that you have online sometimes doesn't match how you are in person. You seem like very like even keeled, even toned, especially because we're moderators together. I was like the newest mod on the team. I was trying to kind of like feel everybody out. I think that's what I messaged all of you guys at one point. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I really want to get to know you guys because like I'm the new kid on the block. Tell me about yourself. Like I want to know you. And then when I met you for the first time, I was like, "Oh, okay." Because you were so outgoing and like you are so friendly and you're just like, like sister bear. I don't want to say mama bear because you do have like that maternal energy, but like also you're like the cool older sister that I wish I had.
Yeah.
So
I'm a big sister,
yeah, you're like a
definitely.
big sister. And I was just like, wow, I'm so glad that I had the chance to meet you in person. Um, because we were meeting a lot of people for the first time, like especially like with
Yeah.
and people from other internet communities. Like, how did you feel going into meeting so many different people, like all at the same time with that much charged psychic energy?
Yeah, it was hard, pretty much an introvert. Yeah, I'm fun with my tribe. If you're not my tribe, you don't get the same person.
Right.
Um, so it was really hard the first time. I attended the one in January, before the one in September. And I forget, I think it was Russ. I think I met Russ in the wild. I think we were at the Poe Museum.
He's so
And he
cute.
went I he went to shake my hand, and like both the ADHD and the PTSD kicked in at the same time, and I felt so bad. I just looked at him. I was like, I will shake your hand tomorrow. Like, I can't do it right now. So it was a little hard, but once I started to realize like I could absolutely pinpoint who is one of us. Like we met Razzle at the Hollywood Cemetery. She was just sitting on a wall. And I'm like, we need to adopt her. You could tell she's
One
one of
of
us.
us. One of us.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, she was like, get in the car, we're driving around, we'll take you back to your B&B, like all that stuff. Um, but it was really nice too, because, I had come from, you know, even though it got popular, it still made you a weirdo, and getting older meant like job opportunity issues you had to reconform for. And, you know, I think seeing a greater community that seemed to really care about each other and were so based in mental health and responsibility was so different than what I grew up with, because I didn't grow up seeing the spiritual community have any responsibility. They're like, we're just going to believe wild things. We're just going to say we believe wild things. And you're going to want to be a part of us. And that's going to cost you $300.
Wild, wild.
That's what I saw. So I really liked that. I wanted to circle back to your ageism question though. Um, because, I'm now working on getting to 53 pretty soon. And
But looking
um,
at all, at all.
thanks. Thank you. That's my mama's genes. I've got her genetics. Um, I think that young people have an integrity problem. I think a lot of times people who are chronologically younger um, have a problem with people thinking they're legitimate. Like, how are you 27 and you are so wise? That doesn't compute. Like, how could you, what's your credential? Um, and I think the elders, now that I'm starting to become one, I'm at the beginning, I'm not gonna say I'm old, I'm getting there. Um, we have a relevancy issue. I think we start to seem less relevant. And I hate that because our wisdom isn't old. It's the same wisdom that everybody else has. It's just we've been thinking about it longer, or we've been practicing it longer, or we've made all the mistakes before you have. So I'm really encouraged by our community watching people of all kinds of different experience levels and age levels, and confidence levels really take each other in.
Yeah, I think that there's this mentality that kind of strikes when you're newer into the community. And I've experienced this. People don't really know my background, but when they're like, "Oh, you haven't been around as long as we think you have been." Like people are like, "Oh, you've been in the boot crew for a while." No, I haven't. Like, "Oh, you've been doing this for a while." No, I haven't. I've been lurking for a little while, because religious trauma. But it's just like I feel like younger folks have that need and like feel like the need to fight for their place at the table.
Mhm.
And the only one you're fighting is yourself. Your place has been there the whole time. The table is long enough. The table will magically transfigure itself to get longer and add an extra chair.
Yep. Yep.
Because there's plenty of room. But I feel like people fight so hard to be seen as relevant sometimes because they can't validate themselves. They
Yeah.
with, like you say, the self-confidence issues. And I'm not going to say that I'm above this because I fought for my place at the table too. And then I
Hmm.
finally realized recently in the last couple of months that I don't need to fight for my place at the table. I can go buy my own damn table and put it in the corner over there and put up the damn sign saying, psychic readings 5 cents, like Lucy does in Peanuts. Except,
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist, but I realize if I can't validate myself, I can't expect anybody else to validate me for me. And
Yeah.
I think that's what, chronologically younger people struggle with, or people new to the community struggle with, because we've grown up, especially my millennials out there. We grew up craving validation.
Yeah.
Just the way that we were raised, I think as a collective generation, like we can say that, we went through so many different life events. We went through Y2K, we went through September 11th, we went through wars, we went,
Columbine.
yeah, and like all of these things.
Yeah.
And,
Hmm.
so the Gen Xers, but we have different experiences. Gen
Yeah.
Z kind of had to walk into that. They walked into the back end of that. So now you have millennials who are basically just like cool older siblings or cool aunties and uncles because they're choosing not to have kids. They're choosing to get dogs or
Hmm.
cats. So, they're out here shaping the young minds of the zillennials and what I mean,
Yeah.
Gen Zers out there. And I think Gen Zers get a lot of shit for no
They
reason. But
do.
yeah, you have like a little fraction who kind of act like little shits on the internet. But that's just like a small fraction. Just like it doesn't matter what generation or what age or who you are. It's just like if you're a little shit, you're a little shit, whatever.
Yeah.
Shit, sir.
Yeah. Each generation has had to deal with their individual traumas, you
Mhm.
know. Um, my brother is 10 years younger than me, so, he is the eldest millennial group. Um, but we are similar in that we were promised a lot of things if we did XYZ with our life, and it never happened. You
Yeah, it's like
know, I,
yeah, it's like millennials can't even buy a house right now because we had all these dreams. Like, our parents, like, I know my parents came to the US like with the American dream, like buy a house, have like this cookie cutter family, like, the traditional Caucasian, like American family, right? And like, I can't even buy a house because like we weren't taught these basic skills of how to do your taxes, how to, maintain a house, like in terms of like household finances, how to buy car insurance. Do you need life insurance? Things like that. We're learning as we go. And like, I'm kind of envious of Gen Zers right now because like they're kind of learning the things. Like they're kind of getting a early education. Like you have like these young moguls and like social media influencers who are like getting like a crash course very quickly and they're very successful, like being influencers or
yeah,
bloggers, whatever. Um, I forgot where I was going with this. Um, my ADHD really just kicked in.
yeah,
But yeah, I really don't think like going to the ageism thing, I don't think it matters how old you are or how old you feel. It's how do you hold yourself as a human being when you're around other human beings?
yeah.
Integrity. Do you act the same
Mhm.
as if somebody was watching you when nobody else is watching?
Mhm.
Are you living as your authentic self? And, are people getting to know you? Or is it a facade of what you want people to see?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, it's just so fascinating. We could talk about this for hours. Like, really, guys? Like, I had a list of questions sent to me by Kai. Shout out to our resident Australian across the spiritual spooky side of the internet, Kai,
Yeah.
for these great questions. I just kind of
Yeah,
like
we love Kai.
them. But it's a fascinating period of time, and I think people
It
are gonna look
is.
back at this period of time, the 2020s, 2010s, early 2000s, and say, wow, spirituality was really different back then. You
It
know,
really was. Mm.
we were worried about completely different things. We're worried
Yeah.
about like how fast of a gigabyte, internet service do we have? You know, um, like, oh my gosh, is my DoorDash account like still current? Like things like that is what we're worried about
Yeah.
now. And like I can only imagine what the problems and opportunities are going to be 20, 30 years from now. I don't want to think that
Yeah.
far.
It'll be interesting. I can't wait to vote for some millennials and Gen Z people. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for somebody younger in there. My poor generation didn't get a chance at the power. The ones that came before us kind of held on to it, wouldn't let us in. So I'm excited for the younger ones to get in there. But that's what I meant by leaning into yourself, that confidence. The more you know yourself, the more you can be yourself, and decide how much of yourself other people deserve. Because not everyone deserves your whole self. Sometimes you have to be appropriately guarded about who your
Yes.
whole self is.
Absolutely. Live as your authentic true self, but shield, please. For those spiritual people out there, learn how to shield your energy. Learn how to guard your energy. And that's why there's a lot of witchy people out there. Like if you gotta do an egg cleanse, do an egg cleanse. If you gotta like sage your house, be careful with that. Learn what you're doing first before you sage your house, because sage actually attracts energy sometimes, you
Yeah,
know?
kitchen sage sometimes works a lot better than white sage, and white sage is closed. So we are very
Right.
careful with that one.
Yeah, it's like Palo Santo, like it's if
Hmm.
there's closed practices, there's closed practices for a reason. But
Yeah.
yeah, just cleanse your energy, just shake it off if you need to. But just realize like not everyone has the best intent, you know? Some people act like they're your friend, but they're not, you know? And spiritual people do the same thing. They act like you're their friend, but they're energy vampires. And they literally sit there and just drain you of your knowledge, trying to get free readings, or just like they just want to know the gossip of what's going on. They just want to be parasocial. That's a big
You want
thing.
to be special.
Yeah, you
That's
want
what
to be
you want to be
special.
careful of. Yeah.
But here's the thing, you're special, you're relevant. It doesn't matter if you're
Everybody
a
is.
content creator or if you're a micro celebrity or if you are like a huge celebrity like Mariah Carey, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're all human at the end of the day. So
Yes.
protect your energy and your space. And,
Yes.
I always say in like the readings that I do, like, if there's energy that no longer serves you, leave it behind. You know,
Hmm.
you got a cord cut, you got a cord cut. Like, you know, cut,
And
you,
the thing is,
so
too,
go.
like, we're all made of the same stuff. Every single one of us is made of the same stuff. You break us
Part of
down
it,
to the
blood and guts.
smallest. Yeah, we're the same. And we're made of stars. We're made of the same stuff as what's out there. So we're all that special. We're all stars. We're all that special. We don't all have to have angel wings. We don't all have to be like crazy Xena warrior princesses. Some of us can be pretty ordinary and it's still freaking special. A lot of people I've seen manipulated into doing things because someone told them they were extra special in a particular way. And I would encourage people to really um, celebrate the ordinary in your extraordinary. You know what I mean?
Love that. That was such a good closing statement. And I'm over here, you said Xena, and it triggered my Xena yell. And I was just like, should I do it? Should I not
Can
do
you do
it?
it?
Guys, turn on the volume for a second if you're listening to this podcast, like when you're at work, because it might shock you.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah,
That's the
we watched
one.
that every single night it was on. My husband and I, we were glued to that television.
I love Lucy Lawless so much. And then
Yeah.
she's like this philanthropist. And I'm just like, I just love you even more, Lucy. Like, let's do the things. Let's
Yep.
not come to California when Sally is busy planning events and doing things. Um, but no, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast today.
Yeah.
Really feel like this is going to be like a part one and part two.
Oh.
I feel like we have so much more to talk about, and I feel like we would, I say we, like me and my spirit team, we would love for you to come back. And
I
talk to us
I know
some.
a couple of your spirit team members.
Oh yeah, they really like you, so that's good. Um, but speaking of, we're gonna do some plugs real quick. I know
Yeah.
Ruvinka's still working on it, but for those of you who don't know, Ruvinka does some excellent, excellent AI artwork. And I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit because you did something amazing one day, and
Mhm.
I, I I'm I'm gonna take the credit for this one because I was like, "Do you think that this is possible?"
Yeah.
And you were just like entertaining my dumb ass over here, just
Yeah. I
like,
was like, let's find out.
I was like, what do you think of like spiritually like channeling to do your AI artwork, right? Like, can you like depict what my guides look like? And you fucking did it. And I was just like, you caught a guide that didn't even like I didn't even talk to you about. Like, it's
Yeah.
amazing to me the level of psychic ability and discipline that is like involved in this creative process. So before I keep going on and gushing about you, do you want to talk about your AI artwork for a second?
I can. So, you were telling everyone how, I don't seem as old as I am. And one of the reasons I think that might be is because I've tried to always stay current, music wise, pop culture wise, friend wise. I don't think I have one friend older than me, one. Um, but I really wanted to try to introduce or blend together um, technology with ability because the future is here and the future is coming and the technology is just going to be more and more as we go. um, So yeah, when you suggested or when you asked, like, do you think you could do that? I was like, I don't know, let's find out. Let's see what happens. And like the process was really just kind of focusing and doing the channel work and getting an image that I felt really good about and then making the technology work. I had to, tweak some prompts. I had to guide it a little bit, but the image was in my head. So I was trying to get the tech to do what my head had already done. And honestly, I was really surprised. It was really successful. And like I said to my computer and everything, I was like, no, I need to go back and look at this because I need to keep investigating this avenue. I know when I did it for myself, it kind of helped. It gave me a validation, like I know of this guide and that is what they look like. That is how they feel to me. And sometimes too, like you can get tired or you can get low energy, or sometimes that visual helps you make that connection. We're all spicy in our own ways in our brains, and sometimes some of us need like a visual to help us really connect to something. So yeah, I'm investigating that, and working on a process to take it from being computer generated to human augmented, a little bit more hands-on. So hopefully when I get all that worked out, I'll let you know where you can find it.
No, I would love to. I think it's amazing because like some of your work is very like fantasy like and like
Hmm.
surrealism, but some of the other stuff that you do, it's so realistic. I'm like floored like by some of the work that you showed me, and like I still have that like saved on my phone, and like I look at it from time to time. I'm just like, holy shit, she nailed you, dude. And then everybody knows my guy William. William is just an interesting character. But he just was like, yep, that's me. That looks pretty close. I'm pretty happy with it. Ruvinka's even like done AI work of my deities. Like I had AI stuff of like Anubis pop up, and I was like,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
so cool.
that's really when it started to catch my attention because I'd had a session with Theron, you know, because I never really clocked guides. Um, I kind of, this is going to sound really snooty, but it's not, I promise, because I can't see anything lower, but my frequency typically hits higher than guide, not high, but higher than guide. So I don't really clock them as much as other people do sometimes, which can be frustrating.
That's not
But I
snooty at
had,
all, though. So it's like me. My natural frequency sits at guide level, but I am so used to communicating higher. At first, I was having trouble communicating with ghosts because they're kind of like closer to human energy. So that makes
yeah,
sense to me.
yeah, yeah. I mean, higher, lower, it's not better, worse. It's just like I can't see ghosts. I
It's
can't,
like
it
tuning the
won't happen.
radio like
Yeah.
into that frequency. It's sometimes it's really tough to do.
Yeah, but I had this session, my first session with Theron, and they described two guides, and um and they were talking about a lantern, like an old-fashioned lantern, and I had just done a bunch of just like fantasy pictures, just creatures that I thought I had made up. Maybe I didn't make them up. But these lanterns were everywhere in those images, like weeks before Theron said anything about it. So when you then suggested, hey, do you think this could work? I was like, because the lantern, so maybe.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I think that'd be a really cool experiment next time. Like you have a consult coming up with Theron.
I do.
Like a day or two before you have the consult, like just sit there and see what you get,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
bring it up in the consult because like I would be fascinated to if you would like to share like how that went because you're really gifted when it comes to like translating what's here like onto I want to say paper, but it's not paper, but like onto the screen through your AI programs. So I thought that was really cool, and I wanted to share because I know you're going to eventually make a business out of it because you're just really good at it. And for those of you who don't know, Ruvinka is a very talented reader as well in terms of oracle cards and tarot. I know she's very humble about it, but she's read me
Yeah.
like in the best way possible. Literally, like I think I almost cried the first time you were just like
Oh
reading
no.
me because the stuff that you said were so true. Like I think it was your Celtic Oracle deck, literally
Yeah.
just like read me like a fucking book. And I was just like, we just met in person, like literally like 2 hours ago. Like what? And then, it was when you get psychic people in the same place, it is insane. Like I think when
Hmm.
I read you for the first time, um, because I had read some of the other mods on like a virtual Zoom call, but you weren't there because you were, I think, doing something else or you were at work still. And so I was like, oh, I get to read you finally. And I think I read a situation that happened literally like 6 hours prior, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was
Yep.
like, that is so insane to me. I don't remember all of
Hmm.
what I said, but it was just like it's
Yeah.
crazy how people can validate each other. But it's like you
Hmm.
believe in yourself for you to get validated. So kudos to us
Yeah.
for sitting confidently, sitting like right now versus where we were. Because before Sacred Spaces, I was struggling with self-confidence and sometimes being a little overconfident. And like I think I have found a really good balance now to like be feel solid in my abilities, but then, realize like my way is not the only way. Like I'm not better than anyone else. I've never thought that.
No. The differences are so interesting. I love seeing the differences. It doesn't take away from any one of us, really. It just, I think I made you laugh the other day when I said that's why Baskin Robbins has 32 flavors.
Yes.
I
I died when you said
didn't
I was
expect it
like
to be that funny, but
I was just
but
like
it's
I'm
true.
like I'm like an everlasting gobstopper. You never know what flavor's coming next. Like it's just happening. You just have to let it happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm gonna come up with all sorts of stuff. Like I bought a bag of Albanese gummies today, like obviously the superior
Mm,
bear. And I was just
they
like,
are.
I'm just like, I never know what flavor I'm gonna get today. I mean, I kind of know what energy I kind of sit in, but damn, okay. But anywho, yeah, but thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you. And
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
of course, you're the like, come on now. But guys, if you want to connect with Ruvinka, you can always join the Savage Den Discord or you can join the Boo Crew. She is at both of those places. Um, Also, if you guys are new to the podcast, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are listening or watching this. You can find me, Sally, over at the SagittariusSavageTarot.com. Um, and my social handles are generally Sagittarius Savage Tarot. So you can find me out on the interwebs. And yeah, we will see you next time for the next episode of the Mindful Sagittarian podcast. Never know what dumpster fires I'm going to cause. Thank you for containing said fire today. We talked about a lot of cool things. And yeah, if you guys have anything you want to hear me or another guest like Ruvinka, who knows what the hell they're talking about, um, uh, just let us know in the Discord or send me an email at the mindful Sagittarian podcast at gmail.com. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you again.